thank you very much for this kind introduction, and I would like to stick also to your thanks to Boaz, who invited us here to Israel in this friendly and inspiring atmosphere. Thank you very much for this invitation. I'm very lucky to be in Israel here. I shall not give a presentation on history, but I'll try to explain the current situation of anthroposophy, but relating to some historical aspects. I hope it will fit to our visit to Kfar Raphael this morning. In 2009, Maria Jenny Schuster left the physical plane, as theosophists might have said, in the age of 102 years. She was the last contemporary who personally had met Steiner. Now the charisma of immediacy has expired. Personal pupils exist no more. Nobody has at his disposal the surplus of a personal relation to the doctor, as Steiner often was called, in a mixture of reverence and recognition by his fellows. Anthroposophy has become a community of interpretation. This is the center of my reflection in the next 30 minutes. I'll present four aspects. After a historical outline, I'll search for answers on three systematic questions. One concerning Steiner as a person, then I'll have a look on the practical applications of anthroposophy, and finally I'll present some reflections on the anthroposophical society as a body with regard to macro level of social change. Now the first point, Rudolf Steiner, a life from theory to practice. We might split the life of Steiner into two periods. One period, he was predominantly inclined to theoretical, or let's say, non-practical questions. This period encompasses the years as an editor of the works of Goethe, as an editor of the Magazin für Literatur, a magazine on literature, and as an author of his theosophical works. In 1992, he had become a member of the Theosophical Society ADIA, which coined his ideas decisively. And he remained convinced theosophist by heart, even after he left the Theosophical Society in December 1912 in Cologne. But he never, regardless of the fact that he created a quite personal, very German kind of theosophy under the name of anthroposophy, he never lost his theosophical roots. This non-practical period ends in the years before World War I, let's say about 1908, 1914. With regard to the later transformations, I highlight one dimension of this orientation towards theory. He was regarded as a charismatic guru, as he called himself sometimes, as the great teacher, the leader of the esoteric school, the head of its anthroposophic Freemason rites. This is a picture which I discovered 2 years ago, which shows Steiner in the situation of clairvoyance. He describes him as being just having a clairvoyant view. He was the author of several texts guiding to so-called higher knowledge, the best known being the collection of reflections and the title, How to Attain Knowledge of Higher Worlds. That was the book that our anthroposophists this morning led to anthroposophy. This is a book from 1905-04. He was venerated as an absolute authority, and the acronym DDHG, DDHG, der Doktor hat gesagt, the doctor has spoken, could finish any discussion. I'll tell you a little anthroposophical joke about that. Rudolf Steiner is walking around with a friend near Dornach, the center of the Anthroposophical Society. He's hobbling. Returning into the anthroposophical village, he immediately stops hobbling. His friend asks, "Why do you stop hobbling?" Otherwise, Steiner answered, tomorrow everybody throughout Dornach would hobble. So there is a second period in which Steiner created practical applications. In 1906-07, he started to help an anthroposophical physician to create medicine, but really that started in 1920. In 1911, he began to speak about eurythmy, an anthroposophical form of dancing, but this really started not before, the 1920s. After the Great War, a lot of practical applications came into life, predominantly the concept of the restructure of society, the so-called social threefolding, the Waldorf education, 1919, the medicine, a church inspired by his ideas, the Christian community, a movement for handicapped people, caring for their souls, as Steiner called it in 1924, and finally the creation of an anthroposophical agriculture in 1924, later called biodynamic agriculture. But what happened to anthroposophy after his death? Let me give you a brief chronological survey, which is quite reductive, but we don't have any reliable research work, scholarly research on this post-Steiner history. And my view is focused on the German situation where anthroposophy was important, but, well, that's simply the region which I know best. When Steiner dies, Germany is in the epoch of the Weimar Republic, between the two wars. For anthroposophists, it's 1925. For anthroposophists, it's the period of search for orientation. The Anthroposophical Society is split up. Ita Wegmann, the woman Steiner had loved so much and who caused a crisis in his relation to his wife, she had been excluded from the society in 1936 by his wife, more or less. And Marie Steiner, his wife, was unable to reconcile these different wings. Subsequently, Steiner's works were not sold in the Goetheanum till the 1970s. Then the time of National Socialism came. The Nazis banned the Anthroposophical Society, robbed the archives, took the real estate, arrested some anthroposophists. But in some years, we realize another aspect. Many anthroposophists were members of the Nazi Party, and the anthroposophical farmers collaborated with Hess and Himmler and the SS. Anthroposophical medicines were tested in concentration camps. I don't want to go into details. It's a very German story of its own. After World War II, the situation of anthroposophy recovered on a modest level. A reappraisal of the past, a discussion over their role in the Nazi epoch did not take place. One aspect seems important to me concerning the next decades. The anthroposophists survived as nearly the only occult group in an institutionalized form with some impact. Thus, they became central for great parts of the alternative movements in Germany. I'll give you some examples. The development of the Waldorf schools. The table shows the increased level of the Waldorf schools, the numbers of it. You know, it was quite stable till the 1970s, but then it began to grow very quickly, and what we heard this morning in Raphael illustrates this great development in the last, let's say, 10, 20 years. But this is only an example for the growth in many fields of anthroposophy. I show you here some juice produced in the biodynamic agriculture folklore in Germany. This is anthroposophical cosmetics and medicine by Veleda. In 1974, the first anthroposophical bank was created. Nowadays we have 4. Then the anthroposophists were important for the creation of the Green Party in Germany. On the right side you see Otto Schily, who defended the German terrorists as a lawyer, and Petra Kelly, and Otto Schily became later the Minister of the Interior in Germany. And he is a convinced anthroposophist from his family. These are the buildings from one of the anthroposophical universities we have in Germany. We have 1 university and 3 high universities for applied science. So these are some little hints on current situation. I would like now to come to the biography of Steiner in the conception of anthroposophists. As I mentioned, Steiner was the undisputed leading authority for anthroposophists. It was nearly impossible to criticize his work until, let's say, some years ago. Meanwhile, the debates about the work of Steiner have become a quite severe discussion, not only among anthroposophists, but also in the public realm. Especially his racist statements caused considerable disturbance. In Steiner's writings, you may find sentences as follows: Indians are degenerated, Asians are passive souls, Negroes are driven by physical urges, Judaism has been overcome by the progress of evolution, and so on. These were and are real problems. Since 2007, well, you have a critical history of anthroposophy and a quite harsh debate. In 1912, the director of Steiner's personal archives, Walter Kugler, had to leave because the editors of his work remained somehow paralyzed facing these problems. Since this year, David Mark-Hoffmann, who wrote a recognized work on Steiner and who ran an important Swiss publishing house, the Schwab Verlag in Basel, he accepted that some of Steiner's work are going to be published in a critical edition in a recommended philosophical publishing house. This surely has lasting consequences for the reading and the interpretation of Steiner's work. And with that I'll enter a problem which he shares, or which anthroposophists share, with theosophy from its beginning. The core of anthroposophy, the investigation of higher worlds, and especially the attained higher knowledge, can no longer be regarded as a trans-historical fact, as a form of philosophia per annus, but Steiner and his ways and his ideas can be interpreted historically, in contexts dependent on other, namely theosophical texts, and as a result of ideas which developed over years. This is the step from claimed absolute truth to relative truth. And I don't know what's going to happen in this situation with the anthroposophical society. That means Steiner has become an object of historical research and hermeneutic interpretation, not only for scholars, but, and that's new, for anthroposophists as well. The theosophical shibboleth, "There is no religion higher than truth," is going to be a historical and a relative position. In this context, I'll place the transformation of the role, in my eyes, of Steiner. If I read anthroposophical texts written until the 1950s, I find mainly a teacher who guides to absolute truth, higher knowledge, which is not threatened by historicism. Currently, the situation is changing. We are reading, or anthroposophists are going to read Steiner's works as historical texts. They historize him. And with this position, anthroposophy might be leaving the common platform of theosophic tradition. Well, what about the practical applications of anthroposophy in this context. If we look on them, we may discover a story of great success. Anthroposophical schools, universities, banks, churches, farms, and I did not speak about these anthroposophical cosmetics, clothes stores, restaurants, dolls, and all these things. I'm quite sure you have them in Israel as well. But, as always, oh, that's perhaps a picture of an anthroposophical restaurant, and you may realize the stereometric forms in just quite Bauhaus-artic environment. And you could see these non-right-edged edges in Kfar Raphael today in this moment. Well, what's the complex reality? I would like to highlight one example of this success, the Waldorf School or Steiner schools. The sheer numbers, which I already showed, are impressive. And the educational program, rooted in the German life reform movement, has been widely accepted in the non-anthroposophical society in Germany. Co-education, no school reports, theater, farming as normal subject of school lessons, no repetition of classes, all these ideas have partly become standard in German public schools. And the results of Waldorf education are not bad. They give no reason for concern. They are just on standard level or above. But there are irritations, and I would like to mention 4. First, the Waldorf schools have problems to find convinced anthroposophists as teachers. If 5 or 10% of the teaching staff are engaged in anthroposophical questions, a school may be lucky. Second, the didactic program has remained in most schools unchanged since about 100 years. There's a lot of critique, and many Waldorf pedagogues know about these problems. But there are schools where the pendulum swung from one extreme to the other. Beneath dogmatic, sclerotic Steiner schools, you find others where you fail to identify traditional markers of Waldorf education. Third, that's important, the occultist heart of Waldorf education has become questioned, not only from outside, but from Waldorf teachers as well. They doubt some of the moral esoteric foundations. A Waldorf teacher, does he really need to be an initiate? That's Steiner's opinion. It is necessary that the seating plan of a class represents the karmic relation of the pupils. Is a teacher forced to know the previous incarnations of them? Does the school need a separate liturgy for the pupils? What happens if the anthroposophical anthropology of ether and astral body and chakras lacks acceptance? Finally, the greatest problem, which I mentioned in my headline, destructive success. Public schools integrated many elements of the educational reform movement, co-education and all these things. And to complete the confusion, a lot of schools have been created in Germany which are run by former anthroposophists using Waldorf ideas, but they don't want to be regarded as anthroposophical schools. That's again the question, how do we create the boundaries of our research field? That means the identity markers of Waldorf schools face 3 challenges. On one hand, basic convictions are contested in an intern debate. Then, its contents are largely diffused into the non-anthroposophical society, and some anthroposophists fear Waldorf light. And we see a process of a strong, sometimes wild innovation. Some anthroposophists deny that the reformed schools in the Waldorf world still belong to anthroposophy. The anthroposophists are facing quite similar problems in other fields of practical application, which I won't line out. But the consequence might be winning in the practical field might mean to lose in the realm of the foundational ideas. And that's what I suppose might be called a destructive success. Finally, the anthroposophical society itself. What is the role of the anthroposophical society in this situation? On one hand, it is still the center of anthroposophy and of the anthroposophical movement. It gathers convinced anthroposophists. It possesses the Goetheanum with the archives of the society. It publishes official letters and journals. And normally, the leading figures of these anthroposophical practical fields are members of the society. Concerning the numbers, the situation is not bad. Currently, the society counts 47,000 members. Some years ago, it counted 50,000. That means the number is moving sideways or slightly falling. It seems that the percentage of younger people is decreasing faster. The number of the subscribers of the journals is declining. The society has to reduce the staff, and the financing of the Goetheanum is not longer guaranteed. That's a very difficult point for anthroposophists. What are now the reasons for this decline? I would like to propose several answers. One cause is the major trend of individualization in Western societies. You may practice a lot of anthroposophical techniques without being a member of the anthroposophical society. Churches, unions, parties complain about the same problem. Then, a sister of individualization is pluralization. There are a lot of occult or esoteric groups with similar offers. And there is another factor of pluralization that has become quite important in the recent years, but I have no ideas about its importance and consequences. The anthroposophical movement is undergoing a deep process of internationalization, which I expect to change the anthroposophical world profoundly. This morning we heard Bach's song with a translation of a New Testament text which was regarded as Jewish, or to fit in a Jewish context. And things are running much more complicated in India and South America concerning the anthroposophical world. So we are facing a really very interesting process of internationalization. Third, this pincer movement of individualization and pluralization has arrived within the anthroposophical society. Individual anthroposophists and a plurality of anthroposophical groups live within this society. Again, we see an antagonistic process of invention and traditionalization. But the process of controlling and sanctioning new or so-called divine positions are small, much smaller than those who hunt down sects usually think. Fourth and last point, there is also an internal deplausibilization. It concerns the true heart of anthroposophy and of theosophy as well. Blavatsky, Besant and Steiner claimed to pave the way to high knowledge, to an objective truth. Everybody should be able to read in the records of the high worlds, in the Akasha Chronicles, should become clairvoyant. The results are disappointing. Many anthroposophists complain, more or less frankly, if you speak to them when you know a bit better, that they don't have this supersensible, this übersinnliche experience. There is one solution which might be regarded as obvious. Anthroposophists should accept new leaders who claim to have exact this higher spiritual experience. But with this proposal, we would enter one of the most conflictive areas of anthroposophy. A lot of persons have been skipped out because they claim to follow Steiner in having this higher knowledge. It fuels bitter conflicts in the anthroposophical society and milieu because anthroposophy up to now did not develop a culture of conflict resolution with this, with regard to this contradicting claims on the same level. Now, which are opinions for the development of the anthroposophical society? I see two feasible ways, and I just apply some, I suppose, well-known results from social research. First possibility, a conservative demarcation between the interior world of anthroposophy and the non-initiated world. It would provide clear boundaries. It would create a hallmark called anthroposophy, and conservative anthroposophists are working quite hard in this way. But it would be, in my perspective, a way into a ghetto. Second possibility, a liberal attitude, quite open to adapt anthroposophy to a non-anthroposophical world. This is a quite common way in the fields of practical application of anthroposophy. It would not end in a ghetto, but it always faces the danger that a profile becomes blurred, or finally you might lose your identity, as some Waldorf schools do, which no more have the name Steiner or Waldorf in its title. Currently, and these are my final reflections, only one thing is clear. Anthroposophy is going to change rapidly. I don't have the impression that it ends just as theosophy in Germany or in several other European countries, where it had to dissolve its structures. The German society, the German Theosophical Society, ADIA, doesn't exist anymore. The anthroposophical institutions are too strong. The attempt to open engaged debates is still high, and the practical fields are commonly accepted. And what we saw this morning is just an illustration of this living and somehow impressing anthroposophical world. I think we shall not see the end of anthroposophy, but considerable transformations. And I propose to do much more research work in this field. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Please.
It seems required that in the ranks of the societies, some new seer will rise, some new charismatic clairvoyant that would say that could take this movement to new directions. Can you say that there was some kind of seer, or you expect one, or that the development of this movement blocks this option?
Ask the seer.
But
You should ask a seer that question.
well, as some of you know, I'm not a seer. I might respond only in a sociological perspective. There are these seers. If you go into the internet and search for Judith von Halle, Judith as the Hebrew Judith von Halle, that's a woman who claims to haven't eaten anything since 6-7 years. She doesn't drink, and she earns all her energy by light. So she's an important figure in this field. But if you claim, and she has a circle of pupils, but if you claim to have knowledge in a conflicting field, there will people who say, but the doctor has said, and we can read that in a book of Stein. And then you are in a situation where you have basic claims of knowledge on the same level. And anthroposophy didn't create institutions to discuss relativity, to hierarchize these problems. And so they don't solve the problems, but they don't quarrel really about it. It's a situation of consternation. They don't go one or the other way. And the second point, which is important, I mentioned it briefly, the possibilities to control something in the society are very small. We have sometimes the idea that's a great institution and a directory in Switzerland and all these things, but they are only under several circumstances which I could name able to control and guide the society. What we have seen in Raphael is quite normal. There are people who think, well, Steiner, that's my option. I'm going to build a kibbutz, an anthroposophical kibbutz, and there's nobody, really nobody who can disturb them. So for me, it's more an open question, why is there no atomization of this society? And I have really no answer, because I do not know enough details. But it's really impressive that these people in Raphael regard themselves as anthroposophists without any great problems. And, well, you have to look behind the curtain, but it somehow seems to work, and it seems to work quite well.
But they were accepted also by Donach. No? They said that they are a part of the society.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
In that sense, they have the certification.
Yeah, but because it's nearly impossible to give it not. Yeah.
So let's follow the order, please.
I'm a bit intrigued by your story because it goes very much in parallel with things that one can see in the way Scientology has developed over the last maybe 10 or 15 years, with an organization that tries to trademark its own doctrines and practices, and then a whole group of independent practitioners that are generally known as the free zone. And Scientology has a very typical way of responding, and that is litigation. Simply, if you use their terminology or if you use their scriptures, you'll be sued. Are there any kinds of, like say, legal structures within anthroposophy that say, well, these are our trademarks, you can't use our fonts, you can't use our product names, you can't use Steiner's pictures, and so forth?
Two things. Concerning the trademarks, you're quickly, not in jail, but at, what do you call it in English?
Court?
At court. If you, for example, make these dolls, which I showed you quickly, there are about 10 persons who have been to go to court because they didn't respect these things. That's one point. So there is a legal, an attempt to control this area. The second point, which is very important and very difficult for me to realize, there is something like an internal control. Right? They don't say you're a wrong anthroposophist, but they would say, so we should have to discuss Steiner in a very special way. And perhaps you need some help from Donach and institutionalizing or something. And it would be problematic if, and we're friends, we don't have problems, but we should discuss about that. And that is very, very, very strong. And it replaces the open discussion. I don't know how it works exactly, but that's a part of the, of creating anthroposophical identity.
So it's a kind of a soft orthodoxy, is that right?
Why soft?
Yes.
Yeah, soft because it's not it would not understand itself as orthodoxy, but it acts like an orthodox system.
Two answers. It's not soft. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And anthroposophy is a very plural word. There are very liberal anthroposophists and there are hardcore anthroposophists. When I enter in Donach on the hill and they see me, they turn just to go away because that's the devil. And there are other anthroposophists which invite me constantly to visit them and to discuss them. So it's a very broad world, and I have the impression you have to analyze every agricultural institution or school as a social individual.
Yeah, thank you, that was very informative. You differentiate between Steiner, the theoretician, and the practical applications. And it's like there is metaphysics on one level, and then cosmetics and schools and so on.
And banks.
And when I listened to that, it came into my mind that some years ago you wrote an article on anthroposophy as a real religion, and you argued that it's a real religion. So did you change your mind on that topic? Because I cannot find the religious side if it's only theoretical metaphysics and then cosmetics.
Ethica cosmetic.
Well,
Ethica
you know,
cosmetic.
I mean, the ritual work, the prayers, the
מאוד
Christian
קרוב.
community.
If I can add one more point to the same question, let's say that if it is a kind of religion, and many of the dilemmas and the development you described can give the impression of this, then what will happen if you will, what you didn't bring in this talk, if you would take the typical methodological tools of comparative science of religion, of the charismatic persona, of the establishment phases and the problems of orthodoxy, and implement it to this analysis?
Well, as you know, we could now start a new conference on the definition of religion, on understanding what is religion. My position, very briefly, would be religion is what I would interpret a blank signifier. And it's a question of discussing contents in different perspectives and regions if you identify religion, and there's no, in my perspective, no general definition of religion works. So that's what we have to discuss. Then the more concrete question, what's about cosmetics and religion? It's partly dependent on my presentation, where I would like to present some transformations and developments. If I would return into the world of Steiner's theoretical concepts, I would still say, yes, it is a religion. So I had to define it, that's clear. I would have two arguments to speak of a religion. The first one is Steiner himself. He said he wanted to be a religion, but that was normally regarded as a religion. That's not enough. It's this world of historical critiques and these theologians and all these queer religious people. My religion, and he says this quite explicitly, is a religion of higher knowledge, which I achieve by a rational, merely empirical way. And these religious people that are mostly for Christians, they only believe. But I know. That's one point. And the other point, if I collect some elements which we regard, well, it's an open discussion, normally as belonging to religions, let's say, where do we come from, where do we go to, what's about rituals in passages, they all have these things. And it's interesting for me that this field of practical applications, including cosmetics, has become part of this community. And I think it's really a rare situation that it's linked that closely. Is that convenient?
Yes, thank you.
Go at last.
I'm torn here. I want to say something, and we should go to lunch. But just quickly, I think there's one term that didn't come, and that's New Age. And I think what comes from your lecture and what we saw the difference between the Theosophical Society, the meeting yesterday, and the visit today, is different adaptations to the New Age milieu. And I think that the big change that occurred is between the occult milieu to the New Age milieu, and the sense is that Theosophical Society didn't know how to do it, Anthroposophical Society knew how to do it.
Yes.
My idea that there are two things: the social structure, which somehow the social structure of anthroposophy fits more into the loose New Age networks, and the more ideological side, which paradoxically the emphasis on practice, which you showed, is much fits New Age culture, while the turn from first Theosophical Society to the second Theosophical Society that Pat spoke about, the knowledge-based, fits much less into New Age culture. So, in brief, I think that's the but I think it was wonderful to see, this difference between how anthroposophically adopts so well and Theosophical Society, I think, struggles and I believe is dissolving.
Okay, so thank you again for both.